What are the top questions this upcoming season? Find out next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5. As always, make sure to follow and stream us on Spotify. Today is Friday, March 18th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott White. And let's start with Fernando Tatis, who is undergoing wrist surgery and will miss about 3 months. Scott, when is the right time to draft Fernando Tatis?
Well, it's kind of a matter of how deep your league is, what your risk tolerance is, how deep your league is to the extent of how good your replacement is going to be until he gets back. So that does factor into the thinking. But as for where I have him ranked, I have him ranked just behind the tier in the outfield that includes Christian Yelich and Cody Bellinger, a couple other players with first-round upside themselves, but big question marks. Giancarlo Stanton's in that tier. Mitch Haniger's in that tier. I just moved Marcell Ozuna in that tier. So Fernando Tatis for me is right behind that. Again, it depends a little on the league context, but that puts him just outside the top 100 overall in my rankings. Now, you looked at some of the ADP data in NFBC leagues since the surgery was announced, and he's going quite a bit earlier than that still. So I may not get much Tatis if that holds up, but I'm okay with that. I mean, I don't want to pass up a player that I feel pretty confident will be a fixture in my lineup for somebody who, best case scenario, he's going to be available for 60% of the season. And of course, there's a possibility of setback from there.
All right, yeah, that ADP for the NFBC the past 3 days since this injury was announced, 45. So going in the 4th round, it's too early for me. We did a mock draft the other day. Fernando Tatis went 85th overall. That's closer to the range that I would be okay taking him. Next up, when will we see Ronald Acuna? Scott, this is an ever-evolving situation. We got another report on Thursday that he could return April 21st as the designated hitter for the Braves and then start to play the outfield 1 month later. So,
yep. And that was straight from the GM's mouth. That was straight from Alex Anthopoulos. So that's a pretty trustworthy timetable. I'm still of the mind that if I don't see him playing in spring games, doing all the moves he needs to do that we can be sure he'll actually be ready on time, I'm not willing to invest a first round pick in him, but I have him back in my early second round, ahead of like Luis Robert, but behind Kyle Tucker and Mookie Betts. I've always been of the mind that your first and second round picks, more than anything else, you just don't want to mess them up. Acuna may have more upside than some of those names I just mentioned, but okay, if it all works out, if he comes back on time and he looks like Ronald Acuna, great. I got a really good player anyway. And I would rather avoid a potential disaster scenario of the guy coming back from the torn ACL.
Scott, I never expected to be talking about this next topic on a fantasy baseball podcast, but here we are. Will vaccine mandates derail anyone this upcoming season? There are mandates in both New York City and Toronto. What are we thinking?
This is the most perplexing one of all, because I'd be inclined to say, they'll figure it out. Let's not worry about it. But they didn't with Kyrie Irving of the Brooklyn Nets. He's just as big a star to them as Judge is to the Yankees. Irving has only been playing in road games this year. Now, will Judge or any of the other Yankees or Mets who aren't vaccinated, and it is multiple, but we don't know who they all are, will they dig in their heels the way Irving did? I don't know. I doubt all of them will. And that's part of the issue, is we don't know how things play out next. It's possible New York rescinds its mandate between now and then, too. I haven't actually moved anyone down in my rankings based on that, but this might be the single reason why you want to wait as long as possible to do your draft. Because if it's the final weekend before the start of the season, when we still don't know any more about this situation, it's going to be tough to draft Yankees or Mets at face value. Certainly the ones we're suspicious about their vaccination status.
Yep. It's a tough situation right now. Let's stay in New York and talk about Jacob DeGrom. What's really going on with Jacob DeGrom's elbow? He dealt with a UCL tear last season. Scott, what do you believe when it comes to DeGrom?
Well, he said he had a normal offseason. He prepared as normal. The UCL is fine now. Buck Showalter said he's on a normal schedule. He's already named him the opening day starter. Everything sounds like it's hunky-dory right now. So we'll see if that continues when he starts pitching in actual spring games. As I said for Acuna, I'm more likely not to take the risk of drafting DeGrom, but I'm at least a little more open to it now. If he lasts until late in the second round, I'm starting to feel a little more optimistic about him.
And that's exactly where he's going. The ADP 20.6 for Jacob DeGrom. I believe there is no bigger risk-reward candidate going in the first 2 rounds than one Jacob DeGrom. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, your smart speakers, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. We'll be back again on Saturday morning. Bye-bye.